can't be shy as a creative, otherwise you go hungry. And because the agency, is already a business, so that element of being shy is already gone. Because if you're in the creative space, it's not all about this is what we wrote in the legal. There's also a social contract. There's a reason why certain agencies like working with certain creators, because there's a social contract. You know how we work, we know how you work, so it's easier to work together.
Welcome to another episode of the Lucrative Africa podcast. I'm Dami, and today I'm going to be having a conversation with Siba Nxumalo. Siba is a Swazi storyteller, strategist, and creative entrepreneur based in Kigali. She's the co-founder and chief creative officer at TORI Branding, where she has turned complex brands briefs into honest people first stories for organizations like FIFA, FIA, I think it's FIA, NBA, which you are probably more familiar with, FIFA, NBA, the BAL, the Basketball Africa League, FC Bayern Munich. Like, look at this big names, Radisson Blu and BK Arena. And she has helped them to speak in a more, tell their stories and speak in a human voice. She has also led marketing sponsorship and athlete services for IRONMAN Rwanda. And she's also the co-founder of Yanbu Hub, a learning space that gives Gen Z creatives the skills, mentorship, and community that she once searched for herself. But there's much more to Siba than what I've listed. So, hi Siba, can you tell us a bit more about who you are and what you do?
Yeah, for sure. I don't know, hearing that bio is making me shy. But yeah, so as you said, I'm Siba, Sibane Nxumalo. I was born in the Kingdom of Eswatini and born and raised there. Went to school briefly in South Africa and then moved to Rwanda, Kigali full time. I came here for school and then just never left. So I co founded a creative agency with a very good friend of mine, but also a business partner for like the past 6, 7 years, Dozier. So we've co-founded a couple of things together, but most recently being TORI Branding and also Yanbu Hub. So TORI was really created from the need to just humanize brands. Nothing fancy, nothing complicated, just wanting to hear more from brands, less in a less hard sales way and in a more relatable human way. So our very first client was AOU, which was fun, turning that brand into like a more storytelling human brand, and then we just grew and leapfrogged from there. So yeah, my biggest thing is really human stories, especially for African brands, or rather helping brands, whether they are from the continent or not, to relate more with African audiences. Yeah, I think that's like a in a nutshell of what I do. I don't know if you want me to go into like upbringing or whatever. Like you let me know.
Oh yes, we're definitely going there.
And then,
that was going to be my next question. So, tell us what's your story, what inspired you to become the creative entrepreneur that you are today, to found or co-found Tori, and what has just led you to the point you are today in your career.
for
And
sure.
as a person, let me not
Um,
just say career, because that's not the only thing that that we
yeah,
are. It's
for
not just we're
sure.
not just our careers.
For sure. I mean, the world has convinced us that we are, but we fight every day to not be just that. But I never thought I was going to be an entrepreneur at all. So I kind of grew up in sort of a creative space. My family liked a lot of music, so I was exposed to a lot of music, a lot of film, and I was I connected with the rest of the continent through that as well. So I learned a couple of languages, like obviously beginner, intermediary level through music. I connected with the rest of the world through music. So music was a big part of my introduction, I guess, into creativity, and then writing as well, which was my initial discipline. Like I got paid to write basically, so that's how I was introduced into creative careers. So I did a lot of copywriting, and then sort of snowballed into marketing and PR and sponsorships and writing basically. So yeah, I think that was my intro into the creative space. My mom was a chorister, so she sang a lot. So that heavily influenced my my intro into the creative space. And then literature. I'm a big fan of literature. So I was in school. I still am now, because I love stories. I love nuance. I think that's the biggest way to describe how I approach creativity. I like nuance and people and stories and stuff. So, and then I went to ALU, which is where I guess I started exploring entrepreneur or leading a creative team, to say, like, before the entrepreneurial journey. It was more of like leading like a writing team or for Campedia. So we co-founded a campus media organization. My co-founder is very visionary, so he comes with these ideas and he's like, yo, let's do this. And so I've been fortunate enough to be approached by him for a lot of his projects. So I just jump on it and we start operating. So campus media, so write a lot of writing there as well, and strategy. That's when I started like experimenting with strategy through Campedia, because now it was an organization, a club, but felt like an organization really, because we had a lot of students who had joined and wanted to be part of it. From Campedia, we did Ubuntu. So we're like, we can do this for, I think it was a very visionary idea as well. It's just the world wasn't ready for it. But Ubuntu Media, which is similar to TikTok, TikTok wasn't there at the time, so it was very like similar to TikTok. But so we applied to the Hall Prize with that idea. We won the nationals, so we went to compete in the regionals in Abuja and stuff. So Ubuntu didn't really work out, but it's something that I feel we're gonna circle back on maybe one day. So from that, we kind of kept Campedia because it was the most stable, but we're never getting money from it. So it was really just people who believed in what we were trying to do who stayed with us. Shout out to Whoopi and Henry, who were like the ancestors of, I guess, even what we still do till today. They had a huge impact on and how we operate in today. So we had Campedia, and then time for internships. Obviously, you need to eat as a creative and you need to survive. So Dozier took an internship with marketing, AOE marketing, and I went back to Joburg to work there for a bit. Still around the same. I did eventing in Joburg and also copywriting for sponsorships and tenders and stuff. So he hits me up one day. I lived at my sister's house in Kempton Park. So he hits me up one day and he's like, yo, I think we can like turn this into a real company. So that's him, his internship job. He's like I'm doing a lot here and I think we could make this a company. Do you want to come through? You want to join on? I'm like, yeah, for sure, let's do it. So he, with the help of people like Nji and David Adepoju, who are also very huge in guiding the whole process, sort of helped us register a business, like basically showing us the way, guidance in terms of having a solid structure. So we started a business, TORI. We registered it in 2019. No, was it during COVID? The idea came up in 2019, but we formally registered it in 2020 in the middle of COVID. And that's how TORI started, really. And then we had an amazing manager turned client, I guess, Oria, who was the brand manager for AOU at the time. Learned a lot of ropes from her, how to, um, you know, formalize a business really as a young person, how to be presentable, how to look serious. and not just have your work or talent speak for you. It's never enough, really, in these spaces. You need to look the part. So she did a lot in helping in that, but also how to, fight for your idea, how to turn your thoughts into actual, real, solid ideas and how to advocate for them. So, be it with her, and then as we grew further with clients as well, how to, put your idea forward and show that it brings value to a client. So, that's how we started Tori. And in between that, we were really just interning. So, I worked with the language support program. I'm a very big language, words, literature, like all of that stuff person. So I worked with a language support program where Keru was my boss, the most amazing boss ever. So that's how sort of connected as well. He would like plug us with new music and also plug in stuff of the culture into the course content. So like you see, I see a different new agency within the course of language support program, and you'll see a campaign like This Is Africa. I don't know if you guys did This Is Africa, but like he would like plug stuff like that into the course content, which was really cool as well. So yeah, we've been working ever since. So we moved from AOU into other clients, and have been fortunate to survive for the past 5 years and grow the team. So that's a mouthful, but yeah.
I'm like, when you said survive, I'm just like FIFA, Bayern Munich. That's more than surviving. That's something. That sounds more than surviving. But yeah, I mean, very, very, very interesting journey, and I can see how everything kind of like connects or connected into each other, starting like with a background in literature,
Yeah.
music. Yeah, I mean, I'm also trying to see how, because I understand a little more how the literature side of things kind of connects a lot more, I think, with like the content side of like Tori's work. But then
For
I mean,
sure.
I guess I also see music is a form of storytelling too. So I guess there's also a connection to that. But I see like all the artistic connections with everything and the kind of work that you do today. And he talked about the platform that was going to be a pilot TikTok, but the world was not ready for that. Which Ubuntu
Already.
is,
Buntu,
if I
yeah,
recall.
Buntu.
So what was it like? Did it have a short? Was it like short form video content that like TikTok kind of piloted? And then you have Instagram and YouTube kind of making their own versions of that, shorts and reels. So was it that kind of thing, or in what ways was it a pilot
Like,
version of TikTok?
so I guess the short form as well, like the fact that you could do short form content on there, but also one of the biggest things was being able to, like, the idea of, we didn't know how to phrase it back then, but the idea of being able to build your own algorithm by following certain topics, or so you were able to use hashtags to curate your algorithm, so what you wanted to see and the people you wanted to connect with. And then I think the only not only, but I'm guessing there's a few more, but it wasn't the portrait, quick, fast type of content that we see now. It was still very much, kind of like landscape-ish. But then the idea of being able to curate your own algorithm and connect with people who are like you and stuff, and but also have it be short form as well. So yeah, that was Ubuntu. But we laid it to rest. Not there. We didn't kill it. We just, it's resting, and hopefully, I don't know,
It's
it
in
can
a
come
it's in
back.
a coma.
Yeah. We started a lot of stuff, but um some of it pulls through, some of it you use it, you just connect it to what's already growing and existing, and then, yeah. Yeah, but that was Ubuntu.
Yeah, I
Ubuntu
mean, I, I mean, because as you said, it's resting. So who knows what might happen in the future? It could still,
yeah.
resurrect and be something else and become, I don't another competitor, because there are a lot of them are competing in that space now. So let's let's see about that. But yeah, that definitely sounds very interesting. But then I also wanted to touch on something else, or some other things you talked about. So you talked about how at some points, like in your while you were still a student doing you did internships, and you kind
Mhm.
of had some more corporate work experience. You worked also on campus, like with Campedia, but
Mhm.
then you had those internships, and I guess that means you had some sort of formal employment. And you also say you never thought you were going to become a creative entrepreneur, but life just has its way of taking you in different directions. So how would you say those experiences that you had, because you mentioned that your co-founder Dozier also, he had an internship and some of his ideas came from that. He saw that the work that he was doing there, he could also take that and just start a company, and that's kind of part of what gave birth to Tori. um
Okay.
but what were the things that you would say? Like, what was your experience working? Would I say full time now because it was an internship? I believe it was still full time, even though you were an
Yeah,
intern
it was.
and Dozier was an intern. Yeah, like what did that contribute to how you ended up building Tori? What were the lessons that you learned, if any? Again, I'm assuming that they are, but if there were lessons, how did your full time internship work experience contribute to you starting your own agency and the things you are doing today?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I worked. I didn't just do internships, but I also worked full time while running the company at some point. And then I think 2 years ago was when I left corporate for good because I was like, I have to make sure that once I leave, I'm sure that like I won't need for anything. So unlike my co-founder who's completely like take the biggest risk, I was more like make sure that everything is set. So I had a bit of corporate experience even up beyond internships. So I worked in comms at a French company, and I headed comms right after uni. So I had a bit of corporate experience, and I think one of the things that a lot of creatives or creative entrepreneurs struggle with is structures and systems. It's one thing to know that you need a structure or you need a system. It's another thing to implement it and to know how to implement it. So I think corporate really gave me that bone, I guess, of wanting to put structures and stuff. And then I think just a general sense of governance within the organization, knowing different, even when you're a small startup, you still sort of see you try and avoid those, everybody's doing everything, we're together as a family. Like you try to avoid those situations that are very common in a lot of startups. So trying to create solid roles and also already thinking about pathways, especially when we first started, already thinking about pathways for people who come on. Like if you start out as a copywriter, what is your pathway? What is your growth journey within the company? Even if we can't afford it at that point, but when we can, and what would that look like for you in the next 3 to 5 years? So I think a lot of governance um, within the organization, basically having solid roles and making sure that people um, are in those roles, even when a lot of them may overlap from time to time, but you know that the thing that you're supposed to do at the end of the day as each person. And I think, which is something that a lot of entrepreneurs take for granted, especially people those who haven't had a lot of corporate experience, is understanding, because you're so big on carrying your vision forward and you want to grow into something, and you have this, that's what you're focusing on. We can have a tendency to forget the things that our like the people, your team members find important to them. So I think, having been an employee myself, I kind of understood unspoken social cues that people will give, like your team will give you when they're unhappy about something or when they want to say something but they don't know how. So because you've been in that position before, you kind of pick it up and sort of now facilitate a conversation. So I think that's another thing I picked up. But also, um, one thing corporate experience will teach you is that they want you to maximize, like the resources that you have. And so, what does that mean within your own organization, in terms of like your hiring equipment? Do you have a list of suppliers? You can't just come with one supplier, for example. You need to come with 3 to 5 quotes, like quotations, before you hire equipment. Have you spoken to more people about? So basically, trying to save costs, but in a very practical way. Because again, if the company is yours, you sometimes tend to want to be precious with it, and like, this is a big project, I want to give it everything. Sometimes, so like you have that scenario, but then that sort of corporate experience will pull you back and say like, yeah, you want to give it everything, it's a big project, but like, have you considered ABCDE to make it work? So I think efficiency maybe is the word I'm looking for, but in a more practical sense, not in the we have to be efficient, but you don't know where to start. So I think having worked in corporate gave me that sense, but also compliance. A lot of creatives don't know a lot about how to be compliant as a business, tax compliance, all of these things, contracts. If you're applying for a bid, do you have all your papers? Do you have all your certificates? Knowing that after a big project, you can actually approach the brand to ask them for like a certificate of completion that you can use for your in like for your coming upcoming bids as well. So stuff like compliance is very governance, business operations centered, which you can draw from corporate. So there's a lot, man, that I learned, which I've which I've used. I think the list is exhaustive, but I also learned that I don't want to go back to corporate. Yeah,
This place, the way where you are now is very sweet. Like,
I don't know. It's it's not sweet. It's not sour. It's what is
mhm,
meant for me. So
mm,
I'm I can take it. Yeah,
yeah, you stumbled into it, but you found out that it's where you wanted to be.
yeah, where I want to be. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean that's a lot of good lessons actually from like corporate work, and I feel like my audience will probably be tired of me like asking our guests that question about like what have they learned? Did they have a 9 to 5? But I personally asked this because I recall when I was also thinking of going into like creative entrepreneurship, I feel like there was always this push I was seeing online where people just say, you know, the
Leave it
where
now.
you're working, they're paying your salary to kill your dreams and blah, blah. And yeah, I was getting to my head. I'm like, yeah, I need to quit, and at some point,
No,
I had stopped like a job and I was like, okay, I think I'm ready to get into starting my own thing and everything's going to work out fine. And no, it did not work out. It did not
no.
work out fine. And that
Honestly,
leads me into okay, if you can say something if you want to comment on that.
no, I was just saying, like, if you can keep your 9 to 5 as a creative, please do it. Like, there's no reason to come this side and be stressed. Just use your creative talent and do a side hustle, and find an outlet. I would say that should be your biggest task, is to find an outlet and create. But you don't want to, if you don't feel ready, you don't want to come and lead teams, people. You don't want to, go back and forth with clients. Find an agency to do that for you. Like, seriously. So, but you don't have to jump if you don't have to. Yeah. Or if you don't want to. Yeah. Keep your job.
Yeah, and I mean, it's still at the same time, it is fine to want to move
Yeah.
into some. So it's not like we're discrediting that. However, I think you should just know when is the right time to make the move and if you're actually ready for it. And that was going to lead me into my next question because you talked about how at some point you decided, okay, it's time for me to leave the corporate world completely, whereas like your co-founder had left like much earlier and was like still more willing to take some
Yeah.
risks. So what what was that thing that made you, or at what points did you decide that, okay, this is where I think it's fine for me to stop with my corporate job and move to creative entrepreneurship completely? Like, was it did you have a certain milestone you were waiting to achieve with, say, with Tori, before you decided this was the time? Because I feel like it's something that a lot of creatives who might be balancing those two things are still trying to figure out when is the right time for them to say, okay, let me move to this thing completely. So just want to hear your thoughts on what points, what made it, or what points you decided to make that transition and why.
I mean, for me, it just felt like I had reached a ceiling um, in that space that I was in. I was like, okay, anything that I do beyond this, now I'm acting like I own this company. Like, so it was really just I had reached a ceiling. I had gone through the craziest parts of it. I had skin in the game within that context, and I felt like, okay, anything else I do above this is either a reiteration of what I've been doing already, just a different project, or it will really be selling myself short by doing a lot for and not being able to move past the like money wise past that, because really the company has only hired you for a certain thing and they want you to keep doing that over and over again and finding creative ways to do it. So I felt like I had hit a ceiling, and on one hand, and then on the other hand, my company was growing now. Like it was growing and more demanding of me, um more like on ground. Before, like I could do a lot of the work, in like not necessarily remotely, but it didn't really, because my a lot of my work was mind work, strategy, creative direction. A lot of my job required a lot of research and a lot of quiet time, a lot of consuming so that I'm able to come up with good strategies. So it didn't really, but now the operations were piling up. The governance responsibilities were piling up. So it was now less about you're creative and you want to create cool, you know, videos or, campaigns, and more of you have people who are depending on you for a salary. You have clients who are depending on you for a good campaign or a good brand. You have the government waiting on you to fulfill your responsibilities in like paying taxes and all of that stuff. You have overhead costs that you need to think about. You have plans. Q1, what are you doing? Q2, like you now have to seriously map out, and it's your responsibility to do that. So I feel like it all came at the same time, kind of. So with the first one coming a bit earlier, and so what I did was, crazy thing is, when I wanted to leave my corporate job, I I really liked what I was doing. I just knew there was no longer an opportunity to grow beyond that. So I turned my boss into a client, and we had a conversation about it. And she was so amazing to agree to it, which is crazy, but it happened, and I appreciate her for that so much. um, so I she became a client, so that I could figure out a working relationship, and also not also leave them in a bit of a pinch, because my role was very key, and so I wanted to like continue, either find another way of working with them or kind of phase myself out, in a way that wasn't going to be such a hard hit on that company, but also not wasting too much time that my own company now suffers. So I turned my old job into a client, and then was able to do a lot of projects now, like with my full, because knowing that I could put it on my portfolio, my company's portfolio. So I did that first, and then eventually it was like, okay, I think they can now do it. They found someone to do it for them, so I can now leave. So it kind of came at the same time, this growing responsibility on one side, but also this declining um, role, I would say, because the interest was there, but I knew that my role had ended and would now start to decline. Like my work would start to decline because I would feel like I'm stuck. So I kind of now moved back, and it was at the right time because that's when a lot of stuff blew up as well for us. And so I was there. I was back full time at the right time, I would say. So yeah, I don't know if that answers your question.
I mean, yeah, it does. Thank you for that, for the response. I think so. It was more about you feeling like you had reached your ceiling where you were,
Yeah,
and also the work at Tori was getting more demanding, and you needed to be more hands on and more involved, and so it just felt like it was the right time to finally make that transition. And I mean, I guess it is rare, or I've not heard of many instances like that, but not that I know a lot about like these kinds of transitions, but I guess it's rare that you would get your former employers to become your clients. But mostly that just depends on how people have left where they are working, on under what
yeah,
circumstances that might have happened. So it does seem like, I mean, you left under good terms, so
yeah,
it was easy for that kind of transition from employee to client to happen.
yeah.
So it makes
I know
sense,
it's
and I
great, but
think.
yeah.
Mhm.
No, go on. Sorry.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I was just going to also piggyback off that. Look at me saying piggyback as if I'm in the office. But I was going to say, yeah, like now moving on to your role at Tori now. So, co-founder and chief creative officer. So, what does that entail? What does your day look like? You've talked a little about that, the fact that you were involved in a lot of strategy and
Yeah,
planning. Is that still what it looks like today? Or, just tell us about what a day in your life as CCO and co-founder at Tori looks like.
yeah. So I guess there's a lot of the same. Excuse me. A lot of the same thing that I mentioned earlier is a lot of strategy. Uh, Firstly, just to differentiate between a chief creative officer and a creative director, they're different. I know like people tend to confuse the two, but in my day to day, it's really about a lot of research, a lot of um, collaborating with a creative director to say, listen, this is the type of message that we want to drive across. This is the type of sort of material that we want the audience to consume, and this is the type of reaction that we want from whatever particular audience. So basically doing that research, doing that strategy for companies, and also um, creative officer versus creative directors. Creative officer is almost client centric. So they act like the they represent part of the client's needs to the creative team. So creative teams have a tendency of getting carried away and wanting to express themselves more than they want to provide the value that the client wants. So now my job is to say, this is a great idea, but this is what they want to they want to sell X number of things. They want to communicate this message. They want to attract this type of audience, or they want to attract these type of investors, or whatever the case may be. And so basically having playing that like role of balancing between the client's expectation via creative, but then also your creative team's ability to express themselves without feeling like they're being stifled. So how can you now like guide them to still be able to express themselves, but also meet the client's, objectives. For example, they may want to get an event project, and the client says, with this, we want to attract. This is a first event. It's a first. They create an asset that's an event, and they say this is our first one. We're putting our money into it, but with the second edition, we want to attract sponsors, like let's say in FMCG, like an alcohol sponsor or whatever. And you'll say, so whatever content you create, make sure that you maybe show the number of people who attended the event, the testimonials or like the experiences of the people who attended. We want that highlighted within the content. But maybe your creative team will value the setup more and say that was a crazy setup. Did you see the DJ booth, or did you see the like? It's just an example. So they might be inspired, which is a very common word with creative teams. They might be inspired by something that makes them want to create a particular thing that doesn't align with what the client wants. So now I'm going through the video, the highlight video, I'm going through the pictures, and I'm not seeing large groups of people because that's what they want to sell to a sponsor and say we had 5,000 people attend this event. You're gonna get so much brand visibility. These are the type of people who came 18 to 25, blah blah blah. But now your creative team, as much as the video is great, the pictures are amazing, but it's not. They're just showing maybe the people with the best dressed, like they're showing something that they felt like inspired by, or the setup or whatever it is that they're inspired by. And so it being great doesn't mean anything to the client. So now my job is to translate client speak to my creative team, but also do research and show them ways to maintain their creative edge whilst being able to meet still like client expectations. So by that I mean, how can they like how can they improve their creativity for clients in a sense. So if they were working with venues before, just venues, to communicate a client's need, whatever, how maybe now you start bringing in influencers, and even the influencer experience, how does that look like? So now you're giving them more to work with based on what you've done research on and what your country or your the environment's audience might receive, but you're giving them more to work with and more to be creative with, whilst still meeting the value of your clients. But then at the same time, it's also your job to understand when your client is not understanding their audience, because you spend the most time with the clients digital marketing, whatever, like that audience that consumes the brand, you spend a lot of time with them because you create for them on a constant basis. So it's also your responsibility to go back to the client and say, hey, I know you want to achieve A, B, C, D, but don't you think we should start with this first and lay a foundation for it so that by December, festive season, you have a bit of hype around it and now you're able to launch this? Because nobody's going to receive it right now. It's Q1, kids are going back to school, something like that. So part of your research as well is to take it back to the client and say, what you're trying to do is not going to work. So you need like suggesting or working together with the client to come up with a new approach, but also advocating for your creative team's ideas. It's not all about the client, right? At the end of the day, we're all working together to create a good brand. So hearing your creative team out and hearing where they're coming from, and because if assuming that they've worked with the brand for long enough, they kind of understand how to create for it. So also taking those ideas back to the client and saying, look, and advocating basically for the ideas and saying, can we try this out? Can we maybe use a different style? Can we explore with, I don't know, podcasting, or can we stop using hard style in our language and maybe use more storytelling? Can we bring less generic influencers into the campaign and bring more niche centered and maybe micro influencers who have a lot more impact? They may have less reach, but they have a lot more impact. Can we bring Dami, who does like this creative podcast, for example, to interview, somebody who we want to launch a campaign with, as opposed to bringing a big name that everybody knows, but there's really not much impact that they bring. So it's a lot of thinking work and um, and basically trying to play that balance between client and creative. Yeah. So you're the person in the middle who is trying to make make sure that the product, which is the content, goes out in the right way, and managing these emotions, egos, creating, yeah,
Yeah,
basically.
egos. Creatives have a lot of a lot of can have a lot of ego. Yeah. But yeah, so it's just, yeah, basically you are acting as a bridge between the clients and the creative team, and or sometimes also as a translator, because sometimes the creatives may not really understand what the client is looking for, and so you stand in between to pass the
Yeah,
messages from one side to the other, and then ensure that at the end we have what the clients are actually looking for, and not just something that looks good or is great or is
yeah,
nice.
exactly. Like you have all these
It
flying
has to
objects,
achieve the
and
results. Mhm.
yeah, you have all these flying objects, all these graphics, all this. It's a very cool video, but it brings no value to the clients. So
Mhm.
yeah,
Mhm. And for clients, what matters most to them is, what's it called? There's this thing, ROI, return on investment, or the goals that they've set. So, yeah, it's nice, but how does it get us the money, or what we what or the funders or the sponsors or whatever it is that they've set. So yeah, but
yeah,
then I know creatives at the same time I just want to experiment. They found this new way to tell a certain story, and they feel it's nice, and we want to try it out, but it may not necessarily align with the client's goals. So I can see how crucial your role is to like the success of Tori. And speaking of your role again, I wanted to ask what are the because you've said it's a lot of thinking work, but I assume there's also a lot of things that you've had to learn along the way and might still be learning. So what are the skills that you had to pick up and are still trying to pick up in your role?
yeah. I think there's so much. Oh my god. But I think because we started off, actually we're still a very lean team. It's just more efficient now. But you kind of have to play a lot of roles as in a startup before we even get to my specific role. But like as an entrepreneur, there's a lot of skills you have to learn along the way. My founder and I combined, one has had to be a lawyer, an accountant, a so like all of those things, HR. So you kind of have to we've had to learn some of those things, but are excited that now we can we have a bigger team to take care of it. But those basic roles that are crucial to the success of a business, we've had to learn. But also just the gosh, how to there's this thing that happens with creative agencies that are still starting out where you have this grand idea, but you don't know how to communicate it, because you haven't understood what your client sort of wants. So learning to listen to what your client is not saying, because they don't want to do your job for you. So being able to sort of listen to what's not said, learning that I've said this before on another podcast, learning that your clients are represented by real human beings who are human. And so you might hear that, oh, Tori has worked with FC Bayern Munich, and that's the brand that we get to put on our portfolio. But in actuality, we worked with two, three people on that team who we had to be human with, type of thing. So you need to know, you need to hear what they want. From small things like they don't like to be texted at night. They prefer to be texted in the morning. That significantly changes your experiences with brands. Knowing that the people that who are behind the brands are people is very important. So knowing that they don't want to have meetings in the morning, they would rather have meetings late afternoon. Knowing that they are inspired by certain brands. So if a client is always giving you, oh, have you seen what Nike did, or have you seen what, just an example, have you seen what Adidas did with their campaign? So obviously you're not going to be an Adidas, but you are going to try and find the thing that they like within that ad or that campaign, or and try and find a way to incorporate it into your work as well without losing your own essence as a company. So I think if I had learned that much earlier, life would have been a lot easier. That as much as this brand is a brand and it's a group of people, but the people who represent that brand with you as a creative agency or a creative entrepreneur are people just like you. They also want to go out for coffee sometimes to brainstorm of ideas. They like it when you ask about their well-being as opposed to just going, here's your brief. So learning that, and some people don't want that. They just want you to go straight to the point and it's all business. You also have to understand that. So I think that's one of like my biggest interpersonal lessons. And then on the business side, like operation side, again, you need the sooner as soon as you can afford one, get an accountant, get a lawyer, be compliant. These things matter a lot in and distinguish you from you know um, people who are trying and starting on and people who mean business. Sometimes you might find that a client will go with an agency just because they are organized, not because they are the best, but because they are organized. They have a team, they are compliant, they have their tax certificates, they've been audited for the last, whatever, and they are organized. And so what that says to the client is, I won't have to micromanage you. And then even if you give them work that is okay, like good quality but not the most creative or the most innovative, they'll be okay with it because the process of working with you was seamless. They did not have to stress. So I think that's another thing we've learned along the way, that compliance and good business governance and good systems and structures matter more than your talent, your creativity. That matters more if you want to be a business. But if you want to be, you're just a creative who wants to make money from their crafts once in a while, that's okay. But if you want to be a creative business, you need to operate like a business and look like a business and sound like a business. And yeah, and then I feel like uh, from my experience, that usually matters more to clients than your super creative ideas. So I think having that out of the way now gives you the time to not enforce, but rather like foster that creativity within your team without having to worry about you don't have an invoicing system. You don't have all of those things can be, if you put them in a process that can run itself, you can now focus on what really matters, which is the product that you're creating, which is humanizing brands through storytelling, honestly. So yeah.
Very, yeah, very good, good good lessons, insightful lessons you've learned. And I think it was just also reminding me of when you talked about the fact that I love the clients, they don't necessarily, I mean, they would want you to give them good quality or great quality work, but what they are more concerned about is your processes, your systems, are everything in place? Are you compliant with all of that? It also just reminds me of another conversation I had with on one of the previous episodes, where on the marketing side of things, now the marketing, branding, all of that, we also talked about how some of the people who make like the most, would I say, money from their crafts, and not always the people who are the best at doing it, but the
Mm,
people who know how to market themselves best, who know how to speak best. And I feel like a lot of creatives would probably have seen that, and they wonder, oh, I can do this better than this person. Why are they the ones who, but yeah, you can do this better than that person, but that person can talk better than you, they can speak better than you, they promote their work, they tell their stories better than you, and that's what really makes the difference. And that, so that coupled with, I guess, um the compliance side of things, the business side, making sure that everything that you need to have in place is in place. Those two things really, really matter. But that does
yeah.
not, of course, mean that you should put your skill aside, but you need to have
No,
those
never.
ones.
I'm
Yeah.
not gonna have a job. Yeah, but I'm just saying that to be able to
Yeah.
the business, to be able to focus on what really matters, you need to make sure all that boring stuff is sorted out. Like you need to make sure that you have all of that stuff sorted out so that you can focus on what truly matters, and also like find time to kind of reflect on the work that you're doing. We handle some very crucial brands that, when you think about it, are very important in how perception of not only the brand but the country as a whole is perceived outside, like because of the type of events and activities that happen there. So if you're so now focused on compliance, and you forget this very important role that you have in telling a good story about this big brand, that when people want to come to Rwanda, they're gonna go there and see what's happening. Or when people search up the country, that's what they're going to see. So that's what you're responsible for. And so my thing of make sure the other stuff is done is so that you can really focus on what matters. So get that out of the way, or find or hire someone, ask a friend who studied business to help you, you know, structure it so that you can get away from it and focus on what matters. Yeah.
So in some essence, you're not just telling stories of like these events. You're also kind of, you're contributing the stories being told of the entire country itself. So
Yeah.
yeah, there's a lot of weight on your on your shoulders in
Exactly.
that
Exactly.
regard. So it makes
Exactly.
sense. And I mean, speaking of things like that, I mean, you've talked about the things you've learned, but then I know that this journey is, it's a never ending one. So I assume that there might still be some challenges you might be facing in your work yourself, and also as a company. So what are some of these things that you're still trying to figure out how to deal with,
Navigate.
if there are any?
Yeah, for sure. I
And what are you
mean,
doing in oh yeah, sorry to I'm just like, yeah, what are those things, but then also what are you doing about them so far?
yeah, I mean, if you're running a company, you always have anxiety, like at least 5%. Just the level of anxiety differs. Some weeks are good, you're sitting on a good 10, you can manage that, but there's always a level of anxiety. But I think our biggest challenge that we're kind of sorting out now has been engaging with uh, freelancers and making sure that everybody is happy at the end of the day. Because we're an agency, so we are the middleman between client and freelancer, and so we kind of have a 360 idea of the process more than any other side. The client knows their product, the freelancer knows their creative work. We know this thing that we know on both sides. We know enough about the product to create a solid brand. We know enough about the creative because we've seen their portfolio of work. And so now trying to navigate things like intellectual property, who owns the rights to the work? Is it the clients, the agencies, is it the freelancer? Where stuff like that, pricing. What determines a certain price for a certain scope of work? What is the social contract as well? Because if you're in the creative space, it's not all about this is what we wrote in the legal. There's also a social contract. There's a reason why certain agencies like working with certain creators, because there's a social contract. You know how we work, we know how you work, so it's easier to work together. That's a social. It's not in a legal contract, but it's a social contract between even the client. Oh, they want to work with a certain freelancer that you sourced for them. So being able to navigate those things when that freelancer, for example, does not no longer want to or wants to like pursue a different path, how do you now separate the client from that? Which is where I guess something that we've recently solved as well, where we've really tightened processes in the sense that as a client, your your end goal is I want a good video. So there's no need to interact with freelancers, which is something that we used to do before because we wanted, the freelancer to get a better, idea or sense of the product or the service. But now, like, you have to realize that that's not sustainable in the long run because freelancers also grow and some want to grow their own teams and their own, so your client isn't happy because they don't, a certain freelancer is not around. That's a problem. So that's why systems are important because they outlive anybody. They outlive the founders, they outlive the creator. It's input in, output out, literally. Like, so it's you give a brief, you get you get a video. You give a brief, you get a campaign. So like, so basically navigating stuff like that, rights to content, pricing with freelancers, attaching the right freelancers to the right client. Sometimes you get it right, sometimes you don't. The more you do it, the more you get it right. But sometimes you'll see, oh, Dami is really good um, with lettering. So we're gonna put him on a certain project where they want a certain project, but you might find that their style or their vision is different. It doesn't make you not good. It just means it doesn't connect. So how do you determine which freelancer is good for which project? Not just the brand, but like the specific brand project. Um, some freelancers you have to navigate emotions, but you can't shut that down from them because that's what makes their work so good. The fact that they're in tune emotionally and have this sense of um, humanity, just like a very deep. Henry's one of those people, for example. He's very in tune and he's very good with people, for example. But like, you might find that a certain project is not healthy for him because the client doesn't really care about the models that are on set, for example, which is something that a Henry would care about. How are you feeling? Do you want to take a minute to rehearse your responses? But then maybe the client is pressed on time and they don't really care about all of that. They just want, the job to get done. So as much as that person is very good, you also have to navigate stuff like that. Like, there are creatives who are very robotic and not robotic, but very technical is the word. Very like, if the video is good, the color grading is right, the treatment is done right, the sound is amazing, the lens that was used, the elements, whatever, they are very happy with the work. and they're not necessarily emotionally attached to the process in its entirety. So you can put those freelancers in projects that don't necessarily require culture or touching base with teams, and like they want to feel like they're part of something bigger. They're people who are not like that. They just want to make sure that their video is amazing, and they don't really care about the process around that. And so you know where to place them. So I think that's an ongoing lesson, I guess. Teaching moments for us is, how do you identify freelancers who are right for a project? How do you negotiate prices? And what does it mean to license your, to own your work, but license it to a freelancer in exchange for, I don't know, that would be up to you guys to decide. Like all those little big things that can be complicated. So I think that's like one of the biggest ones, navigating that. Um, I think the rest of stuff that we've had to, the rest of the challenges we've had to navigate are very much business operations, which I think are very common in a lot of businesses. You find that you hire the wrong accountant and they mess you up because you find that like, oh, you were not compliant in the last quarter, and you're like, but how? You paid. And then you find that, oh, you paid late because the person didn't declare or something like that. So that's an easy, like, just sever your ties and find somebody better who cares. So that's another thing. Maybe don't get an accountant who doesn't care about your business. You know, many people would think, or accountant doesn't have any business being part of your company's culture, but they do, and we didn't know that before, but now we do. We need to be integrated into our company culture, because that means you will have some level of care for whether the company succeeds or not, and so you will be, very active in making sure that we're compliant, we're on the right track. So stuff like that, that we've learned along the way. Yeah, I think the biggest one definitely is team management. Yeah, team management, being full time staff, freelancers, and then um, clients, like client management is also a very big chunk of it, but Dozier deals with that more than me now. So I think he would have like a better, I guess, response on how he manages that, but he's very good with it. So like managing difficult clients, maintaining retainer clients, because it's one thing to, I feel like long-term clients, you have all the stages of marriage. You have a nice honeymoon phase. You have a phase where you hate each other. You have a phase where, but like, how do you maintain that relationship over a long period of time? And then how do you keep going back to what brought you together, essentially? And if we're still delivering on that, then we can sort any issue out. But if we're all now moving in different directions, when is it time to now say goodbye to a client? Because now working together is at the detriment of your team and their team as well. So yeah, damn, I be happy. This feels like a
No,
therapy.
I'm enjoying the app. Oh. Please, please continue. It's very, very informative yapping. But so yeah, I think the it all boils down mostly to client management and team management. And I think what is common between those two things is you're managing
People.
people around you, and then the people you are working with. And I mean, it makes sense. Managing people is definitely one of the most complicated. It's not, they're not static. Everybody is different, and so
Yeah.
it would it would be, it makes sense that why it is a challenge. Um, but yeah, thank you for sharing that. And I think I also want to know, some of these challenges that you're facing, and also the lessons that you've learned and the solutions that you've come up with to solve, or at least try to solve some of these challenges. Do you have any resources, um things that you've been using to educate yourself, to learn, beyond just the experience of it? You face this thing and then you realize, oh, I should
For
have done
sure.
this a certain way, and then you do it a different way next time. But are there other places where you've learned that you can recommend for other creatives who might also be looking to learn and find answers to some of these, if they're having similar issues as well?
Yeah, for sure. I think I know this sounds very cliche, but really communication goes a long way. You can't assume people know what you want, what you're thinking. And so that goes for the first challenge I spoke about, which is navigating freelancer relationships, agency freelancer relationships, is communicating, you know, a lot in the beginning, about what you can do, what you can afford, what you can give in return. All of those like conversations need to be had. You can't be shy as a creative, otherwise you go hungry. And because the agency, is already a business, so that element of being shy is already gone. So you need to also be able to communicate what you want, so that the agency can now also tell you whether or not they can do it. And then I think contracts help a lot. A lot of creatives don't like to sign contracts. It's very important to have a written agreement. So again, with the intellectual property, the ownership, licensing, rights, all of that, um, it's something that we enforce because we care about the product very much. So we like to protect it. We might have dummy might have created it, but it's bigger than you. It's bigger than me. It's bigger than the client. It's its own entity or its own asset that needs to be protected and shared, fairly, not necessarily equally, but fairly in a way that sort of has a level of benefit for everybody. So I'd say contracting a lot, communication, and then with regards to resources, I am a learner. I like school so much, so I read a lot of white papers, by agencies, white papers. Ogilvy has a red paper because they are fancy, but I read a lot of white papers. I listen to a lot of podcasts. So I listen to the Inside Show, by George. So he interviews a lot of South African creatives. I listen to the CMO podcast, which is a podcast show that interviews a lot of chief marketing officers, chief creative officers of some of the biggest brands, Viacom, um, you know, um, the Art Show, Duma Collective, all these big agencies, all these big independent agencies that I look up to as well. So a lot of those in terms of structuring the company, how to engage with global clients. If a FIFA comes now, do you know the type of language they speak, and do you know what they might look for? If a Bayern comes now, so stuff like that. So I listen to a lot of those type of podcasts, um, which I can obviously share after this, and we can link them. And then I'm very, very like fiction person, because it keeps my imagination alive. So I read a lot of fiction books. I watch a lot of film. I love documentaries as well because I think they bring this interesting layer of humanity, especially like biopics, and you know, I think they're very, I don't know, they are very human centered. So I live for fiction. I live in the clouds literally because every day I have to be faced with decision making. So I tried in my spare time to overcome decision fatigue by living in the clouds, through reading, to listening to music, and keeping my imagination and creativity alive. Um, yeah, I believe in learning from people who have done it before. So I do that a lot. Uh, yeah. a lot. So I think those are some of the resources. If you're a reader, um, of I really struggle with marketing books. They stress me out, so I'd rather a podcast. But if you are like me and you struggle, there's many ways to. Dozier introduced me to this. I think it's called Note Form or something. If you're not into reading like a lot of serious marketing speak books, you can it summarizes it for you and can turn it into an audio for you. You can listen. But I believe in reading, research. I think it helps you turn a nice thought into a solid idea. You have the tools to do that. So yeah, is there anything I'm missing? Yeah, I think, and if you can get a mentor, truly, if you can get a mentor, they help from time to time when you're stuck and you don't know how to speak to certain stakeholders or how to communicate your value or how to renegotiate. Um, they really help. So if you're able to find somebody who can mentor you, maybe multiple mentors as well in different aspects, that would be great. If you don't have one, find someone online and follow their journey and have them as your mentor in your head. And so, yeah, I believe in education, whatever form it is, but it's my big thing. Yeah.
Very insightful, thanks. And I see that a lot of them they're not necessarily like formal, apart from maybe more of the white paper side of things. Yeah, that was the first for me to for me to hear. Although definitely think that the academic knowledge has a lot to tell us. I mean, it's academic. That's the point of that's the point of it. But yeah, thanks for that. I think now I just have two more still like serious questions to ask.
Go.
So the first one would be, I just want to also learn more about your work at Yanbu Hub. So we've not really talked much about that, but I wanted to know, yeah. Peach, I'm not a founder, but Peach.
Maybe one a funder could be watching, but
Yeah, exactly.
yeah. So when we started Tori, we worked with a lot of young people, and so we were just so crazy that we really felt like we could do anything. So we worked with a lot of we ourselves were not experienced in the space, and we worked with literally like with students, and that like crazy ambition landed us some very big clients, like, and so we gave ourselves that shot. We worked with people who were super talented but not necessarily experienced, and we worked on real life projects to turn brands into something that they can be proud of as well. And so we kind of were like, this could be cool. So we tried to scale it within Tori, but it's just not wasn't really feasible because of the day to day job of the business. And so we decided to create Yanbu Hub, which is really an edtech platform, but it's starting to also take other shapes and forms. It's a platform and community of talented creatives who want to who want to learn how to monetize their creativity and take advantage of opportunities and be formal, not necessarily suit and tie, but how to formalize their craft, who are talented but just don't know how to formalize their craft. So we work with a lot of Gen Zs because they're the ones who are most serious about creativity, um, without having to really go to triple A or study marketing or whatever. They want to use what they have at that moment. So we work with a lot of Gen Zs, and we are currently collaborating with the ICT Chamber and 250 startups, which have rebranded to 250 Ventures. So they have a group of young creatives who also want to do the same thing. So we've been teaching those like creative skills, storytelling, fundamentals, how to craft a good story, and then how to let it live in multiple forms, and then also how to let your talent um, be take many different forms in terms of monetizing it. So if you have a podcast, how can it also live in other forms, in through merch, through copywriting and articles, through courses? How can it live outside of that talent and still have all these forms pay you? So it's really just about empowering young creatives who are talented but just green in terms of experience. So we're currently doing that right now, and we have a platform, but we are hosted by NAS.io. I don't know if you've heard of it, but that's where we upload all the course content, but also have live sessions every week. So we have our first cohorts, whoop, whoop, with the ICT chamber at the moment. Thank you, thank you, thank you. We're very excited about it, and it also just um, sort of ties into really just having people recognizing creativity as a career. So we need more Yanbu Hubs. We need more creative podcasts. These type of platforms that help people formalize their creativity, because it's not that there's no career in creativity, it's that there's no formalization of it as an individual. How do you make it a serious career? How do you turn your talent into a serious career? And so, yeah, that's in a nutshell Yanbu Hub. Follow Yanbu Hub on social media. Shameless plug.
We're still going to have that last question where I ask you to share where we can find your work and find you online, and so we'll chip that in there, and it will also be in the description of for the podcast for the episode. But yeah, I mean, thanks for that. And we do have a lot of, I think, like with Lucrative Africa, with the Yambu Hub, there is a lot of overlap with the mission. So just showing young people that they can make a living doing what they love, being creative, and also just trying to change that narrative of starving artists to thriving artists. Yeah. Well, yeah, being being an artist does not mean, does not necessarily mean, it means you can, but it does not mean you will starve if you do the right things, and you know the right things. And I think we really need to shift that, because I think the narrative is what makes your African parents not want you to study arts, because they don't believe you can make any money from that. But if over the next I don't know 50 years, if things start to change, which they're already changing, things start to change in mass, and people start to see that, oh, these people might actually be making more money than those corporate careers that you're saying that they should go into. Maybe when you tell your mom or your dad that you want to be a musician, he would think twice before he tells you to go study engineering, so
Yeah, 'cause,
yeah,
I
definitely.
mean, the creative economy is worth billions right now, and there's no reason why we shouldn't have a percentage of that as a continent. So we just need to do what we can, in our little corners. So to make sure people get a piece of that.
Definitely. And still in the spirit of young people, final serious question. So,
Mhm.
can just kind of consolidating everything that we've talked about today, can you give any pieces of advice that you might have on your mind to other young people who might want to tread a similar path as starting their own creative businesses, starting their own Tory or something like it? Can you give them any piece of advice you have for other young people out there?
Mm. Don't start if you're not sure. I know people just usually tell you go for it. Nah, business is a different ball game. So, which is to say that there's a lot of people around us who are more experienced, who have been in the game for a while, who have skin in the game, who have. So I think it's worthwhile. It's worthwhile for you to shoot them a message if they're far away from you, or like ask really just ask them for a call and for them to give you a picture of, you know, what it means. It doesn't mean you're gonna have the same experience. It just means that you know what you're up against. So I think the art of seeking help and advice has really declined, and I hate that for us because we're so in our, you know. So I wish more young people would seek out, um, I guess, advice, for the lack of a better word, on the industry that they're trying to go into, so that they know what they're up against. And I think it saves you a lot of trouble also. You don't have to learn the hard way, is what I'm trying to say. So, you know, just seek out advice, talk to people. And then I'd say just show your work. Um, the thing that we were talking about, that this is there's a lady that she's a marketing executive in Samsung, and she said, "This is not your mother's house. Nobody's gonna call you from the back to come and sing for the family members. So you have to use your voice, and you know you have to use your voice or your work, or you need to show your work, as an agency or as a creative. You need to show your work. You need to put it out there so that people find you. And yeah, I think that's one thing that I could give advice on. But I think my main thing is just seek out help, however that might look like. What Be it consuming content that's already out there that aims to help you, or reaching out to people. But I think doing that really saves you from a lot of hard lessons that you shouldn't actually have to learn the hard way, you know. So yeah, and then also create community, man. Collaborate. If you have a project in Kenya, you don't know anybody, go online, DM an editor there, work together, be open to that like level of collaboration. I think it's nice. I think many brains are better than one. So I think collaboration is very key, especially like locally, but also in on the continent. There's a lot of talent. So I think collaborate more with people. If you're a freelancer, or you know, and then if you're an agency as well, seek out collaboration. But if you do get in and you are working, just be careful as well. You know, a lot of creatives have bad things to say about the industry because they've been hurt so badly by this very, you know, industry that they love and want to be a part of. So I think, as much as it's all nice and, you know, I think you should really be careful. As a freelancer, be careful that you are not really in a bad position. That you understand the value of your work, so that when negotiating, you're not now mad at the agency for, because an agency is not going to say no, you know. So understand your value, and you're able to negotiate better when you understand that. So knowing that being a videographer is different from being a photographer, and the inputs are different, the market rates are different, all of that, so that when you come to the negotiation table, you know what you're doing, and you're never selling yourself short, in any way. So just, and as an agency as well, just don't sell yourself short to clients because they have a big name. I feel like there is a bit of work you have to do in the beginning, which I don't think anybody can avoid, to have a leg in. But I think at some point, don't be strong held because of big names. Or so, as well as the agency, just understand your value, find your place, or your multiple places within this value chain of creativity, um, and get your operations in order if you're starting a company. Yeah.
Lots of advice. So I mean, whoever is listening, please ask for help. You don't know. That's this the song. Ask for help. You don't know everything. You don't know all
Don't
you
go
think. All you think.
so
Yeah.
don't go broke. Don't go
Don't.
broke. It's not easy. It's not easy creating from a hungry place. You're gonna take nonsense.
I
So
agree.
if you
I've
if
been
you're
there.
not being sustained, if you're not being sustained by your craft, get a job. You go back again. But there's never a need to. Don't listen to all those motivational speakers. They're lying to you. They're fool. Get a job if you have to. Come back again, but don't create from a place of desperation because you're gonna take nonsense. That's bad for your craft. Yeah.
Definitely. Thank you so much, Siba. And I know I said that was the last question, but I said last serious question. So
Yeah.
I'm going to ask you just two more fun questions, or at least I hope you find them fun. So yeah, the first one, what do you have like a dream project that you'd like to work on, a story or personally?
Mhm.
Tell us about that.
I mean, a story definitely. I think we're well on our way now. Looks it's coming together. So I can't really say much. But for like my personal, for sure, like I really want to go into scripting. It's been a dream of mine. Um, on maybe even producing. So creating and scripting and producing um, documentaries. So I really like I want to go back into that a lot, especially for artists and um, creatives who unsung creatives. Having stories around those people. I'm actively learning how to do scripting for TV. Um, and then also wanting to, I think I put it in my bio somewhere. I am very obsessed. Kind of, it's giving me sleepless nights. Urban design and development. So a while back, I worked on an event with the Charter Cities Institute, and I learned a lot about the idea of place, as a concept. Place and how that ties into creativity. So basically, creating spaces at a municipal or local government level and all the way to the top, spaces for creatives, so theaters and art spaces and all of these things. You don't have to walk for a whole like street and there's no single creative inspiration. There's no mural somewhere. It's like the world is becoming so bland. So I'm really really like trying to get into that space. I don't know much about it at the moment, but I am actively learning, following a couple of urban designers. There's a friend of mine who's also helped out in um, um, sharing resources on, the nighttime economies and how you can really just transform cities into spaces that are inspiring and not just you have like a whole street and it's just office park, it's office space, it's boring. And so just that idea of place and creativity and how agencies like Tori can drive that like storytelling. Like how like Paris is considered the city of love. That's a narrative that some agency created, or how like Joburg is considered the city of gold. Of course, they are cultural roots of that, but like the idea of driving that narrative to brand the city also comes from some agency or some junior copywriter who had this bright idea. You never know. But like, so basically, urban planning, urban development, urban design, and how it relates to creativity and storytelling. So I'm just trying to find my niche in that, and it's something that I'm obsessing over currently. So yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing. And I mean, also looking forward to see Tori work on that dream project. project. So I
Yeah,
guess we'll see it eventually.
yeah,
But yeah,
for sure.
final question. Can you nominate two other guests that you like to see on this podcast?
In the pod, obviously Dozier. He's my
Another
co-founder.
perspective, yeah.
For another, as Kerry said, for another perspective, yeah, Dozier. I think he'd be great. He's my co-founder, business partner, and very very good friend. So I think he'd be amazing for this, and he loves young people so much. So I think this, yeah. I'd like for the world to hear from him, and not me for once. And then who else? Who else am I like? I think what's his Chris Schrager. He's a photographer. He's a photographer in Rwanda. Oh, actually, I don't know if I can do three people. Cedric. I worked with
Drop
Cedric.
it.
Yeah, I worked with Cedric during FIFA. He came up with a creative concept and everything, and so we worked together because I translated and I wrote the concept. But he was the creative director for that whole entertainment concept for the FIFA Congress dinner. He's amazing, and I think he'd be great. I'll drop another person, and you choose. His manager. I don't know if he's still Cedric's manager, but Alejandro. He's currently the lead at Impact Hub, but he has a very strong creative muscle, and he has experience in managing creatives. So I think he'd be amazing. Alejandro Jimenez. Yeah, he works at Impact Hub, but he also does stuff um, creative wise. So yeah, those I don't
Thank you
know
so.
3, 4 people.
It's fine. It's fine. I always say two, but most of the time, everybody recommends more than two or three. I think someone
Ah,
has
okay.
even mentioned five people. five people. So
Okay,
the
I
more the more the merrier.
know. Yeah, I know.
The more the merrier. But yeah, we already have a berry on our list. So yeah, but the rest of them, definitely going to reach out. This acts as like the first invites for them. So yeah, somebody else has
Okay.
also invited, has also recommended you to be on the podcast. So I have this
Yeah.
to go to them with when it's time to reach out. But
That's
yeah,
a good
thank you.
that's a good
Yeah,
strategy.
yeah. I mean, that's although we already plan to have you on the podcast. But in the previous episode, someone also suggested you. So it's see, I guess I don't know
Yeah,
if
who's that?
that was any push.
No,
Maybe.
what, Keru?
Yeah,
No,
yeah,
there was
with
no
Kero.
yeah, there was no push at all, I promise. Shout out to Keru, by the way. Yeah, like he really like did something at AOU. And then also with that whole thing about making spaces feel a little more creative. I think he was one of the people who were part of curating those murals around the ALU campus. So he's amazing. So shout out to Keru and Bridging the Gap. Yeah.
Shout outs. I'm sure they'll see this. But yeah, so there's no more final question. final questions. That
Okay.
was the last one. Yeah. But thank you so much, Siba, for having this lovely conversation with me. I really, really enjoyed it. And I'm sure that people who are listening would also find it just as fun and interesting and insightful as I did. And now we come to the question of where can our audience find. I said there's no question. There was one. Where can our audience find you and your work online? So
Yeah.
that's Yanbu Hub, Tori, and your personal pages.
Yeah, for sure. Where can people find Tori? So we are on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram, and our website, which is designed by yours truly, Dami. Shout out. So go check it out. It's a really sleek website. I've received a lot of positive reviews on it. So www.createwithtori.com. Yeah, you'll see it. And then for Yanbu Hub, we have Instagram, and then we use our Tori LinkedIn page for Yanbu. It's still a new baby, so we are developing like the brand, um, I guess, brand book for that and how it's going to exist on different platforms. But you'll find it on Instagram. If you find Tori, you'll find Yanbu, one way or the other. So, and then my personal ones, don't come to my Instagram. Go to my LinkedIn. Yeah, that's where I am trying my best to exist. So yeah, I think that's where you can find us. And then now, yeah, on the Creative Africa.
Yes, very glad to have had you here, to have had you here. But thank you so much again. And to our listeners, thank you so much for listening to this episode. I hope you found it insightful. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, share. It's going to be available on every podcasting platform that you might listen to, and then also on YouTube. If you have any creatives or know any creatives who might find this insightful, please share this with them as well. So, yeah,
Yeah.
until next time, see you on the next episode of the Lucrative Africa podcast. Bye.